This is a demonstration of Wirecast. This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Schools and placing hospitals on in a public address that he authorized military action because the West had pushed too far in trying to draw the country into NATO. He also warned other countries against any retaliation, saying, quote, the response from Russia will be so severe that no foreign nations have ever experienced it before. All decisions have been made. Willie.
President Biden spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine last night, and this morning President Biden will meet with G7 leaders. He says he will announce new sanctions against Russia this afternoon. The statement from the president reads in part, the prayers of the entire world are with the people of Ukraine tonight as they suffer an unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russian military forces. President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. Russia alone is responsible for the death and destruction this attack will bring, and the United States and its allies and partners will respond in a united and decisive way. The world will hold Russia accountable, a statement from President Joe Biden. Joining us now from Ukraine, NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel. Richard, what does it look like on the ground there this morning?
This is a demonstration.
So there have been
airstrikes
and what appeared to be missile strikes in numerous parts of the country, mostly targeting military facilities. And I think we are still in the early hours of what could be a long campaign. I'm in Mariupol, which is in the southeast, and there has not been much damage in the center of the city, but I just came from the edge of the...
Okay, Liz Truss.
नमस्कार भाइयों, और आज कोरोना काल चल रहा है। हम दो ही लोग आए हैं आज ऑफिस में। हमारे साथ गफ्फार खान जुड़ गए हैं। गफ्फार जी, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। तो आज ऑफिस में लोग नहीं हैं, आपको कैसा लग रहा है?
बहुत बेकार लग रहा है। अच्छा लगना चाहिए, जब लोग आते हैं तो थोड़ा अच्छा लगता है। अब लोग नहीं हैं तो फिर भी अच्छा ही लग रहा है। अब क्या करें, नहीं है तो क्या।
तो मतलब आप कहना चाह रहे हैं कि दो ही लोग हैं फिर भी आपको अच्छा लग रहा है। लोग होते हुए हैं तब भी अच्छा लगता है, नहीं होते हैं तब भी अच्छा लगता है। मतलब इस दुनिया से कोई फिक्र नहीं है, बस चलता रहना चाहिए काम। अच्छा अच्छा, बहुत बढ़िया बहुत बढ़िया। तो संगम बिहार में कैसा माहौल है आजकल?
संगम बिहार में ठीक ठाक है, बाकी मास्क कम लगा रहे हैं।
कम लगा रहे हैं। लोगों को अभी भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा है कि कोरोना हो रहा है, बढ़ रहा है दिल्ली में डेली। अब तो कल 3000 से ज़्यादा केस आ गए, तब भी कोई डर नहीं है उनको?
नहीं, इससे कोई डर नहीं है।
अच्छा,
चल रहा है, बाकी लगाते हैं। पुलिस वालों को देख लेते हैं तो मास्क भी लगा लेते हैं। बाकी यही है कि अभी फिलहाल तो चल ही रहा है जो भी चलना है।
अच्छा,
बाकी हम तो लगाते हैं भाई।
हम भी लगाते हैं। देखिए हमारा मास्क अब भी यहाँ रखा हुआ है।
हमारा तो गले में ही टंगा है भाई।
अभी मोहित भाई ने हमें मास्क उतारने के लिए बोला है, तभी हमने मास्क उतारा, नहीं तो मास्क तो हम नहीं उतारते हैं।
अभी हम
तो अभी
करा के आए हैं।
अच्छा, आप
हाँ
कोविड टेस्ट कराने गए थे, तो क्या रिपोर्ट आई है अभी आपकी?
अभी तो नॉर्मल रिपोर्ट है, अभी तो कोई पता नहीं, कल आएगी जो भी आएगी।
अच्छा, कल की रिपोर्ट आएगी फाइनल। अच्छा, कल देखते हैं आपकी रिपोर्ट क्या आती है, उसके बाद देखते हैं। वैसे कोविड आपके मोहल्ले में कोई कोरोना से पीड़ित?
किसी का नहीं।
किसी का नहीं है। बढ़िया है, बढ़िया है।
इंशाल्लाह सही आएगी।
अच्छा अच्छा, वो तो आएगी, दुआ है।
हाँ।
और मार्केट जाते हैं आप? सब्जी फल फ्रूट?
मार्केट नहीं गया, परसों गाजर लेने गया था।
तो मार्केट में भीड़ थी?
हलवा बनाया था बस,
अच्छा हलवा बनाया, कहाँ है हलवा
Demonstration
फिर?
of Wirecast.
अच्छा लपेट दिया, अच्छा अच्छा
This
अच्छा।
is a
किस चीज में
demonstration
लपेटा
of
आपने हलवा?
Wirecast.
अच्छा पेट में लपेट दिया है, दिख तो नहीं रहा आपके पेट में लपेटा
वो
हुआ।
नहीं दिखा होगा वो नहीं दिखेगा।
अच्छा वो नहीं दिखेगा।
हाँ
हमारे मोहित भैया रिकॉर्डिंग कर रहे हैं
हाँ
पीसीआर रूम में बैठ के। तो मोहित भैया कितने देर की रिकॉर्डिंग हो गई है अभी? 2-3 मिनट हो गई।
अभी और चलना पड़ेगा।
आपकी आवाज़ हम तक नहीं पहुंच रही है, कोई बात नहीं, जाने
This
दीजिए
is a
उस चीज़ को।
demonstration of
तो
Wirecast.
मेरा ये साकाल वाला रूप देख के आपको कैसा लग रहा है
This is a
गफ्फार जी?
demonstration of
बहुत अच्छा लगता
Wirecast.
है।
अच्छा लगता है।
हाँ हम भी कराने के लिए तैयार हैं, लेकिन हमें
करवा नहीं
नहीं
पा रहे।
कराने नहीं देते।
अच्छा कराने नहीं देते, तो आप किसी दिन चलिए हमारे साथ, हम करा देंगे। हम तो कुछ भी करवा सकते हैं।
कराने को तो हम भी करवा लेंगे, लेकिन अच्छा नहीं लगता।
क्यों अच्छा नहीं लगता है?
पता नहीं, लोग बागों को नहीं अच्छा लगता होगा। थोड़ा हमारा कान भी थोड़ा सा बड़ा है।
This is
तो
a
इससे
अच्छा
demonstration
आपका
of
कान बड़ा है,
Wirecast.
हाथी वाला कान लगा लिया आपने
हाथी
मन।
वाला नहीं है।
This is a demonstration
गणेश जी
of
वाला लगाया था।
Wirecast.
अच्छा गणेश जी वाला कान है। चलिए चलिए अच्छा है, किसी का तो कान है ना, अपना नहीं तो दूसरे का ही सही।
इसलिए हम अपना गंजा नहीं कराता हूँ।
बहुत बढ़िया बहुत बढ़िया। मोहित भाई बस करे।
Let's say UK Foreign Secretary.
Second is
Havana syndrome.
Salams from the People's Dispatch studios in New Delhi. I'm Siddhant Ani and you're watching Daily Debrief. We have quite an interesting show today. First up, we examine the UK Foreign Secretary's statements coming from Australia. Then we're talking about what again? I've forgotten.
Havana syndrome.
Come on, man. Dobara se. Last fuck up. Salams from the People's Dispatch studio in New Delhi. I'm Siddhant Ani and you're watching Daily Debrief. We have quite a fun show actually today. We're examining the UK Foreign Secretary's statements coming from Australia. We're talking about Havana syndrome and we're looking at the latest in the use of the Pegasus spyware. First up, Britain has warned Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday that its allies would stand together to fight for democracy against dictatorships that it said were more emboldened than at any time since the Cold War. Speaking in Australia, like I mentioned before, British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said Britain and its allies in the free world must respond together to global threats, deepen ties with democracies in the Indo-Pacific, and face down global aggressors who were using economic dependence to try and get what they want. Truss and Ben Wallace, the UK's Defence Secretary, are in Sydney for discussions with the Australian government over closer security ties following the signing of AUKUS last year, which is a pact between London, Canberra and Washington DC, and was designed to enable Australia to obtain nuclear-powered submarines as part of an effort to counteract what it calls an increasingly assertive China. Prashant, using economic might or power to get what you want, where we heard this
maintain civil order, and they are also on the lookout for sleeper cells. They are very nervous that Russia could have organized or infiltrated groups of locals who are sympathetic, who could suddenly come out and try and carry out acts of sabotage or try to take control of the streets.
So, Richard, I guess my question is regarding their attitudes. There's been some question as to whether they'll actually fight the Russians when they come in. Can you tell me what their attitude was toward that resistance? Is there a sense of determination that they are going to push back on the Russians, or do you expect a speedy retreat?
Well, it depends what the Russians throw at them so far. So far, we've been seeing airstrikes, missile strikes, some helicopter assaults, but we have not seen, at least as far as I'm aware, the full-on tank-to-tank battles that could be coming quite soon, and I think we will have to see what happens then when the Ukrainians are not just facing airstrikes at military facilities on the outskirts of cities, but when they are facing the full brunt of a Russian ground offensive. But many soldiers I've spoken to are committed. They do want to fight. They realize that their nation is at stake. Vladimir Putin made it very clear that his goal is to topple the government, which he describes as fascist and neo-Nazi, and Ukrainians are determined to, the Ukrainian military, I should say, is determined to the best of its ability to keep this going. But Ukraine's foreign minister has called for more sanctions and more weapons for the troops. And just a short while ago, President Zelensky said that there are injured soldiers in hospital, and he called for he issued a national appeal for people to donate blood.
Keir Simmons, yesterday, Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State, wrote that an invasion will leave Russia diplomatically isolated, economically crippled, and strategically vulnerable. That has been the assessment, the clear-eyed assessment of most Western diplomats and Western leaders and Western observers. This is an attack that does not make sense economically for Russia, diplomatically for Russia, and quite frankly, in the long run, militarily for Russia. So it's caused a great deal of concern in the West that Putin would move forward against his own long-term interests. I'm curious, have you picked any of that up in Moscow from any military officials, any government officials, from any leaders, that concern?
Well, Joe, I've just been handed more of what Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, has been saying in his briefing to journalists just frankly, the past few minutes, in the past hour. And I'm just looking down to read it for myself. But Peskov saying no one talks about occupation. This word does not apply here. So clearly, again, the Russians saying they don't plan to try to occupy Ukraine. Again, just repeating, Russia's aim is neutralization of Ukraine's military potential. And then kind of fairly cryptically saying a country like Russia cannot fall behind the Iron Curtain. Well, okay, but we clearly know the kinds of sanctions and economic implications that have been threatened and are very likely now for Russia. And I just reiterate, one thing we've been talking about, Joe, in the past few mornings has been about the impact of those sanctions on Russia. But one thing we haven't perhaps talked so much about is just the simple economic fallout. The stock exchange here in Russia had to be suspended in the early hours of the morning. As I mentioned, the ruble is falling. What will this do to the Russian economy? Just the uncertainty, and frankly the uncertainty about how this war will play out. What will that do to the Russian economy, and what will that do to the views of ordinary Russians? But then again, of course, will that leave President Putin feeling even more vulnerable, more vulnerable and perhaps threatened? And I will mention one thing that I found chilling in President Putin's statement, which again has been replayed on Russian television through the morning, because we're talking about the threats of sanctions from the West. President Putin in that speech talked about Russia's nuclear capability and then went on to say Russia has advantages has some advantages in the latest types of weapons, and he says in this regard no one should have any doubt that a direct attack on Russia will lead to defeat and dire consequences for a potential aggressor. So that appeared to be President Putin mentioning Russia's nuclear capability and threatening Western leaders. And just before the beginning of this military operation, we did hear from the French, who obviously have had a good deal of contact with President Putin, and one French official describing him as erratic. Certainly officials here with close contacts to the Kremlin have told me that President Putin will be himself at the head of this operation, very much in charge. So in that sense, I think we kind of depend on that he is acting rationally.
ఇదేనా మారుతి సుజుకి కమర్షియల్ రండి సార్. సార్ ఆ బండి ఈ బండి.
Perfect gift for your loved ones.
వందో ఒక వెయ్యో ఒక లక్షో మెరుపులు మీదికి దూకినాయా ఏందే నీ మాయా ఉందో అటు పక్కో ఇటు దిక్కో చిలిపిగ తీగలు మోగినాయా పోయిందే సోయా ఇట్లాంటివన్నీ అలవాటే లేదే అట్లాంటి నాకి పిలిచినదే కమ్మ కమ్మ కళావతి నువ్వే గతే నువ్వే గతి కమ్మ కమ్మ కళావతి నువ్వు లేకుంటే అధోగతి మమ జీవన హేతునా వందో ఒక వెయ్యో ఒక లక్షో మెరుపులు మీదికి దూకినాయా ఏందే నీ మాయా అన్యాయంగా మనసుని గెలికావే అన్నం మానేసి నిన్నే చూసేలా దుర్మార్గంగా సొగసుని విసిరావే నిద్ర మానేసి నిన్నే తలచేలా రంగా ఘోరంగా నా కలలని కదిపావే దొంగ అందంగా నా పొగరుని దోచావే చించి అతికించి ఇరికించి వదిలించి నా బతుకుని చెడగొడితివి కదవే కళ్ళావి కళావతి కల్లోలమైందే నాగతి కులావి కళావతి కుళ్ళ బొడిసింది చాలుతి కమ్మ కమ్మ కళావతి నువ్వే గతే నువ్వే గతి కమ్మ కమ్మ కళావతి నువ్వు లేకుంటే అధోగతి వందో ఒక వెయ్యో ఒక లక్షో మెరుపులు మీదికి దూకినాయా ఏందే నీ మాయా ముందో అటు పక్కో ఇటు దిక్కో చిలిపిగా తీగలు మోగినాయా పోయిందే సోయా
Vimeo has become part of Mighty Oak's everyday processes. We are using Vimeo links on our website to showcase our work. We are sending clips and works in progress to our clients. And that's actually probably where it's most helpful because there's no extra step that they have to use to sign in. It's accessible and easy to use. And I think it's just a comfort tool for everyone at this point.
I quit my 9 to 5 and I started selling my granny's pickles online. I thought I would have to learn tech, but with Shopify, I could set up my own e-commerce store in no time. In just 4 easy steps. 1, I picked a theme from a sea of options. 2, I added products, categories, and collections.
जब सैया आए शाम को तो लग गए चांद मेरे नाम को सैया